All right, Matthew, the 5th chapter, beginning at the first verse. When you get there, it doesn't matter. I'm going to start reading right now. And seeing the multitudes, he went up on the mountain, and when he was seated, his disciples came to him. Then he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Right before you take your seats, I want you to look at someone sitting next to you and tell them, I am not a peacekeeper. Tell them I'm a peacemaker. Now sit down. We began a few weeks ago a message entitled Peacemaker, or I'm Not a Peacekeeper. And we've already laid the foundation. I don't have time to go into the foundation already laid, but you can go on YouTube and get caught up. But we dealt with the idea and the distinction between peacekeeping and peacemaking. Peacekeeping sometimes allows for status quo and superficial or topical peace while lacking abiding in sustaining qualities that promote for long-term peace. We dealt with the fact that peacekeeping can be sometimes compromised to allow for status quo, while conversely, peacemaking, which will produce ultimate peace, sometimes will bring not only confrontation, but misunderstanding. It's no mistake that Jesus, right after listing these Beatitudes, these series of qualities, and he gets to peacemaking, right after peacemaking, he begins to talk about the persecution. Because true peacemaking sometimes will come with persecution, it will come with controversy, certainly it comes with misunderstanding. If there's anything that would cause the tension that at times could make us feel as if, because of the turbulence, we would be ripped apart in this day and age, it is the role of peacemaker. With a society that is polarized and growing, increasing in this polarity, those who decide that they're going to get in the middle of two incongruent sides to try to figure this thing out will experience unusual pressure. So then one of the most bold and godlike pursuits we can go after in the hour in which we live is peacemaking. In fact, of all these qualities, when the Bible talks about, or Jesus speaks of peacemaking in this Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, when he speaks of peacemaking, he says, of all the qualities, he talks about inheriting the earth. He talks about seeing God. He talks about all of these things, the outcomes for this way of life, as he's giving us a snapshot of what a countercultural kingdom existence looks like. As he gives all of these, the only one that reflects or fully embodies the image of God, of all of them, he says, when you're a peacemaker, he says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Why? Because, again, in the first century, here's the idea. The idea of children or offspring implied that you embody the characteristics of your father and mother. And here, you embody the characteristics of your spiritual father when you're a peacemaker. In the same way people look at me and say, you're a Chaney, without having to see any of my relatives, or meeting me for the first time, if they've seen my relatives, is the same way, here's the idea, that peacemakers reflect the image of God in the world. And while we've pursued so many other things, we've pursued personal righteousness, personal holiness, which is wonderful. But here he says, of all these embodied characteristics, the one that is not only internal, but the one that is internal with an external corresponding action and impact in the world around us. Of all these qualities, he says, listen, of a peacemaker, they'll be called the children of God. You look most like your father when you're a peacemaker. This is the quality that not only causes us to look like God, but creates impact in the world around us. Ask your neighbor, do you look like your daddy? Don't answer, because I don't want to. It's just a question. Do you look like your daddy? Our goal before this is said and done, is for us to look a little bit more like our daddy. And here's the idea. None of us are perfect reflections of God. In the same way, none of you are perfect reflections of your earthly father, but there should be enough resemblance for people to identify you with him. And so our goal is to become peacemakers. But here's the idea. While each of these beatitudes, these qualities, these characteristics, Jesus is giving us a snapshot of what kingdom citizens should look like in comparison to the world and the world's values. And while each of these beatitudes stands alone, I want to make the case that you will not get to the ultimate goal. You will not look most like your heavenly Father as a peacemaker if you do not embody the qualities that precede the one-liner, blessed are the peacemakers. Because deepening the qualities that precede peacemaking are the very things, the ingredients that make peacemaking possible. And here's the idea. It's like gumbo, if you've ever had good gumbo. You know, you go to certain restaurants and they have, a lot of people have gumbo on the menu. But it ain't always the gumbo that you're looking for. And they chicken gumbo, shrimp gumbo, vegan gumbo. There's all kinds of gumbos out there. And sometimes you make the mistake of asking folks, how's this gumbo? Is it pretty good? I've made the mistake of doing that too. Sometimes you have to vet the people that you're asking before you ask them. It's like, is this gumbo good? It's amazing. All right, where are you from? Where are your people from? What's a good gumbo you've tasted elsewhere? What are the ingredients of it? And sometimes you don't believe them. You start asking what's in it. You start naming the stuff. Because there's a lot of stuff that is gumbo in name, but not gumbo in taste. Can we agree? Can I get an amen? And here's the idea. If you look at this, they can be taught individually and they each stand alone, but there's a continuity of sorts that runs through this passage. It's not simply that all these things are secondary beatitudes that are leading to you being a peacemaker. Here's the idea. They each have validity on their own, but the case can be made that when all of these are held in tandem, it best positions you. The kind of person that is a peacemaker have these qualities, listen, embodied well, and there is a unique confluence of all of these things that produce the best end result. In the same way, you can call yourself a peacemaker and not have all these ingredients. But the flavor that you're serving up is not the one that Jesus intended. Because each of these ingredients produce what will ultimately be a godly peacemaker, not someone who's attempting to get people to conform externally to things that they don't themselves embody. Nor is it a person that does it for the sake of control or because of manipulation or ill-placed motives. There are a whole lot of people talking about peace, but who don't embody peace. But peace is a tool for their ultimate ends, and it is not always God's righteous end. But he said, if we want to get to this peace, what kind of peace? The peace that reflects the nature of the God in heaven, then we first got to talk about the nature of the God we are trying to point people to. And the series of Beatitudes that he gives reveal the nature of God and God's desire for us to embody that nature. And if we truly embody that nature, we are best positioned to be peacemakers. He says, blessed. Talked about this last week. Y'all go listen, do your homework. Blessed are the poor in spirit, those who have sobriety concerning self. He says, blessed are those who mourn, grieving the damage of sin, not just our personal contribution to the larger problem. And for the record, we all have contributed to the larger problem in some way. If you don't believe you have, you are a Pharisee. You're the problem. Because you want to correct everybody else without seeing yourself. Get the plank out of your eye, so you could help us with our splinters. He said, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. He said, blessed are the meek. Not, the world teaches that you are to build and to gather more power by any means necessary so that you can impose your will on others. Jesus says, I'm all powerful. But my power is embodied, it's clothed in meekness. That is strength under control. We talked about all this last week. This week, number 4, if you take notes, blessed are those, he said, who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. All right, so here's the idea. If we're going to have peace, we must see the relationship between, follow me, righteousness and peace. The relationship between righteousness and peace. It is righteousness that anchors our motives. And here's the problem with the human condition. Everybody thinks that they have pure motives. Righteousness speaks of, follow me, alignment to a standard. It is not our own definition of the direction we should go based on simply our subjective views. Because here is where many conflicts arise. Conflict arise when everyone has motives, but we don't agree upon a standard. Motives change. Strategies change. Direction change based on our desired outcomes. Sometimes our standard change is based on our own frailty. And so rather than keeping a standard that we're working toward, we lower us the standard so that we feel better about ourselves. And if there is no calibrating direction, if there is no anchoring force, if there is nothing that calls us back to God's prescribed direction, then we're helplessly and hopelessly left to fend for ourselves with everyone warring for their own perception of how it should be. If there's ever any conflict and chaos, it's people who don't agree on a direction. Number 2, there's always chaos when people don't adhere in some way to something that is greater than them. That's why I'm fearful of people. I don't want to go into business. I don't want to go into relationships anymore. I don't want to start a new ministry initiative with anyone who does not answer to or subscribe to something that is bigger than them. Now we're going to get to faith in a minute, but let's just talk about life. You're in trouble if you are dating someone and their opinions and their thoughts are the last say for everything. If you are in business with someone who does not have anyone in their life who they respect enough to hear, change their direction, or at least slow down their steps, you are in trouble. So when you're going to business, start asking people who they're accountable to and who has influence in their life. It doesn't mean that they don't have a mind of their own. They cannot think for themselves. But in the event that you hit a crossroads or you butt heads like those goats on that narrow road, my question is, who do we appeal to? My question is, who has your ear when you can't hear me? What system, what God, what people, who do you give permission to call you back when you've drifted? Who do you give permission when you can't even see you're drifting to speak into your life by letting you know your slip is showing and there's a booger in your nose? I'm fearful of anyone who does not have a standard. Now, here's the difference. Most Christians would try to put forward the idea of fear or rebuke for those who make mistakes, have frailties and failures. I don't have an issue with people with frailty because we all have frailty. I have an issue with people that have no accountability. They are the law unto themselves. Because like that boat, we don't motorboat from where we are, again, to God's perfect standard. We don't beeline in a straight line like a motorboat. We are sailboats. The winds and the waves do affect us. We have to move our sails. And even with our best efforts, there is no straight line toward God's perfect standard. But we are all in a circuitous route, zigzagging toward God's righteous standard. And the thing that keeps us all from shipwreck is not that we're perfect, is not that we are unaffected by the winds and the waves. The only thing that keeps us from shipwreck is agreeing, even when we don't do it perfectly, that north is north. And that is the direction that we are sailing in. Without a righteous standard, there is no north in this land. And we are not zigzagging in God's direction, but we are aimlessly sailing and on the verge of collapse at any moment, often without knowing it. It is righteousness, follow me, that anchors us and gives us a direction. What does this have to do with peacemaking? Have you ever tried to get somewhere with somebody that does not have an objective standard? Who will change their direction and change their argument and change their position and change their convictions based on whatever is expedient and convenient for this moment. Often that is a conflict. You get nowhere with people who are not grounded in righteousness. What is righteousness? Agreement with God on how things should go, even when it contradicts how I believe things should go. What are we as a body of believers if we can't even agree that God is right? Not in theory, but after seeing his word, preaching his word, sharing his word, opening our Bibles every week. But when it comes to alignment, listen, none of us will perfectly do it. But a good starting point is agreeing that God is right. Because I can deal with some people who say, sometimes I'm wrong, but I can acknowledge that God is right. And when I get in the habit of exercising this muscle that allows me to acknowledge rightness even in my wrongness with God, it makes it easier with people in my wrongness to acknowledge it when they are right. Because the same muscle you exercise to be accountable to a standard spiritually is the muscle that allows you to extend that same accountability or to take that same accountability in your human relationships. The challenge is we all mixed up. We declare verbally that God is right, but when it comes to what we'll implement and weave into the fabric of our lives as we go back into the recesses from this holy hill of our normal lives, what we decide will govern our life and what we say is right when we're in church are two different things. But here's what he says. If we're going to work toward being a peacemaker, there's got to be, listen to me, a healthy relationship with objective truth. You cannot get people to agree, and you cannot find agreement when we're on two different ends of the spectrum and there's no mediator or tiebreaker. Isn't that the nature of much of the conflict that we see? People will contradict not only their own convictions, but what they have previously stated when it is expedient to change direction in a given conflict. Here's the idea. Blessed are the righteous. Blessed are those who hunger. It's very interesting. It doesn't even just say blessed are the righteous. I made a mistake. It said, blessed are those who hunger and thirst. Here's the idea. I'm not perfectly living this out, but I know north. And I'm moving in that direction. I'm conforming into the image of Christ every day. I'm giving him let the peace of Christ umpire. Let it rule in your life. I'm allowing him to umpire on a daily basis. There are times where I miss it. There are times where I can't see it. But once you ever played a board game with a family that doesn't know anything but who bang? You ever played Uno with people that change the rules? Well, that's not where I'm from. I'm from D.C. I'm from L.A. I'm from Compton. Like, huh? Why are we set tripping over Uno? That's not how we played it growing up. And some are smart. We agree on the rules ahead of time. Is there stacking? No, it's like, and after a while, it just, you just get so tired and worn out of them changing the rules and adding stuff. And like, why didn't you tell me this before we started playing the game? Now that you got 5 plus 2s, 3 wild cards. You want to interpret the rules now because it's beneficial to you. Now, had I had that hand, you would have made up all kind of stuff. And what do? When you need to solve it, it's like, all right, listen, I hear where we all grew up and how we played and what our tradition is, but can somebody hand me, give me the rules. I want to know how this game was designed to be played and not what your preference is to get this win. Are you with me? And half the time we ain't playing over any money. You with me? And you got switchblades and knives like it's a poker game. Give me the rules. Somebody yell, give me the rules. It is the objective standard that comes in once. It comes in, watch this, and we agree that that is what we're following. Now, there may be interpretations. There may still be a little tension over the minute details, but in terms of calibrating us, in terms of anchoring us, we are able to find peace because we're taking it above and beyond ourselves, out of the realm of what is subjective into objective truth. We say, if none of us are right, here's what we agree on: God is. It's the best of our ability as we dig into the Word of God, as we discern the will of God. Where we should be as believers, even if you're not fully righteous, there should be a hunger and thirst for righteousness' sake. Even if you're not perfectly beelining toward God's righteous standard, we should all agree that God is right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And if God is right, that's our rule book. Look at your neighbor, tell him, I don't care where you grew up. I don't care where you grew up. Peacemaking is not peace at any price. Biblical peace and righteousness belong together. A true peacemaker does not merely quiet tension. They desire what is right, just, and align to God's will. The most difficult people to deal with, particularly in this day and age, whether it is personally or whether it is in the public sphere. When you bring up a biblical narrative, show them what the biblical narrative means and show them how the biblical narrative contradicts some of what has been perpetuated, not only individually but collectively. And we all have some area that we violated as it relates to the biblical snapshot of where it should be. Again, watch the characteristics. When that is brought to our attention, there should be a corresponding, let's go back further up, mourning, something that breaks our heart, that says this is misaligned to the will of God. What do we need to make right to get us closer to righteous alignment or God's will? You can't even exercise righteousness if you cannot mourn. If there's no grief or sorrow when something of God's will is brought to you and you look at God's will and look at yourself, you look at God's trajectory and we look at our trajectory. If we don't first mourn, we can never move into righteousness or righteous alignment. We need all of the characteristics named here to move us closer to God's will. If we don't have righteousness in our dealings, we have no objective standard to bring peace and reconciliation to two incongruent states. It's like building a house on a foundation that itself is crooked. He said, if we want peace, we've got to have a healthy relationship with righteousness. All right, number 5, here we go. Blessed, like this one, are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. You know, one of the most difficult things to watch, particularly as it relates to, in my field, spiritual leadership, where people see a human moment in the life of a spiritual leader. Particularly one that is framed or forged by sin. Yes, yes. And we all, to the best of our ability, are looking to live out God's righteous standard. And I've been around long enough for 27, 28 years, I believe, doing this somewhere around there. No, longer than that, 27, do the math. Oh. 29 years. Whew. I started real young, y'all. About 2 or 3. 29 years. And one of the most difficult scenarios I've seen people in is when there's a human moment in the life of a leader and there's a mass devastation, falling away, and all of those things. But what I found is when you go back and trace it forensically, many times when you see that as the outcome and you go a little bit further back, what you will find is generally that was the kind of person or leader, follow me, who did not extend a lot of mercy along the way for others in their journey. So when they deal with the same thing that people in the congregation deal with, there is no mercy, there is no grace. And sometimes that's when people start to blame Christians and to blame the church. But sometimes, just sometimes, it's because when they were in their human moment, you had no mercy for them. So you've conditioned them to create environments absent of grace and mercy. So when it's your turn, likewise, whether it's pastors, leaders, ministers, politicians, forget about all the public stuff. What about your house? What about your friendship circles? Question, are your relationship marked by the extension of grace and mercy, or are they marked by judgment and ostracism? When you and your girlfriend fall out, in your beautiful friendship of 10 years, it's getting quiet in here, I love it. I've watched relationships, the fabric of relationships unravel over one offense, and the history shows that they've weathered together 100 battles, yet with one offense. Because someone, get this, humans, someone was wrong. What is your relationship with people who you've been in relationship with? Not misunderstanding, but who were wrong. Because the idea of mercy does not speak to misunderstanding. The idea of mercy speaks to releasing someone who is legitimately wrong. And here's what I found. You will never live this life if you're going to be real and go deep with people. You will not live this life and avoid being wrong or being wronged. Often both of them. So since it's going to happen, my question is, what you going to do with it? Are you going to display the nature of Christ as outlined in these Beatitudes? Not perfectly, but he said north is north. Do we display the nature of Christ, or do we use the spiritual sight that he's given us to further protect ourselves, to isolate ourselves, to convict others, to blame them, to shame them, what will you use your spiritual sight for? He said, blessed are those who, blessed are the merciful. For when it's your turn, you'll receive mercy. This is not simply a spiritual principle. This is even for those who don't believe in the Lord. If you look at the lives of those who are marked or receive grace and mercy, generally they are the people that have extended grace and mercy to others their entire life. The people that condemn others for most of their lives, even in good times, people are hoping that it all falls apart so that they can be proven wrong. But people that have extended grace and extended mercy and extended understanding, listen to me, when they find themselves in the same scenario, generally people extend grace and mercy and understanding. And here's the spiritual part. What God says is, how dare you not extend mercy to human people on the human plane, the horizontal plane, when you're standing here because of my mercy. You are where you are because of my grace. If I was to give you what you deserve, if I didn't give you what you don't deserve, you wouldn't be where you are. You know how many times you deserve more than I gave you, but I withheld it because of my goodness? How dare you not be merciful when I've been merciful? Mercy. Bootleg definition, you guys heard this before. Grace is not mercy. Mercy is not grace. Very similarly related. Bootleg definition, all theologians just give me a pass. Grace is God's supernatural endowment of exactly what you need to get through where you are. It is not just salvific grace. Salvific grace has to do with your salvation, but there's also sustaining grace when you should have lost your mind, but God kept you. There is traveling grace when God gets you from one destination to the other one safely. There is sustaining grace where God holds you together. There's all sorts of grace. Grace is God's supernatural endowment of exactly what you need to get through where you are. Another way of putting it is, grace is when God gives you what you don't deserve. I didn't deserve another chance. I didn't deserve to be used by him. I didn't deserve for all of my needs to be met. Though I wasn't always faithful to God. I did not deserve not a second chance. I didn't deserve another chance. Y'all, we ran out of chances a long time ago. Has anybody else lost count like me? When God gives you, I don't even know how many chances I'm on. It's another chance. It is another day. It is goodness and mercy following me all the days of my life. It's new mercies every morning. I don't deserve it, but God supernaturally gives it to me. That's his grace. His mercy, similarly, it is not him giving me what I don't deserve. His mercy is withholding from me what I do deserve. I do deserve punishment. I do deserve for things to unravel. I do deserve to be treated according to the errors of my ways if God is just, but in his love and in his sacrifice, in his mercy, he withholds from me the bad I deserve. And I don't know who I'm talking to in this place. There's someone who's been living for years, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for something that you did back in high school and 20 years ago to catch up with you. And God be sitting to me to let you know, stop waiting on that package. That is consumed in his mercy. He has been withholding what you do deserve. And for somebody, his word to you is he's going to continue to withhold what you do deserve. Stop waiting for the worst case scenario and start believing for God's best case scenario. Not because you've been that righteous, but because you are the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. Paid the price. God says in his mercy, he's going to withhold some things you do deserve. That wasn't for everybody, but the two people it was for. Shout amen for me. Amen. Blessed are those, listen to me, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. What does this have to do with peacemaking? I'm glad you asked me. I only have one more after this. You cannot be a peacemaker if you cannot see the fundamental flaws of people and still labor with them to get to God's end. If your peacemaking stops at offense, then we'll never be peacemakers. And sometimes this is a general idea of not giving people everything they deserve. Because sometimes our desire to give them that work, everything they deserve, causes us to win the momentary battle but to lose the ultimate war. Is there anybody like me that's ever gotten lost in the sauce, forgot about the purpose of coming together to try to work through challenges or to work through difficulties? Have you ever allowed the offense to eclipse the solution? People who are merciful are those who are able to see human frailty and still labor for a period to get to God's desired end, not only globally, but personally. He said, blessed are the merciful. Not only will they obtain mercy, but people who are merciful are best positioned to be individuals who are able to bring peace. If your relationship with mercy is fundamentally flawed, you will never be the kind of person that will bring reconciliation from two incongruent states. Last one, kind of. Blessed are the pure in heart. Love this one. Blessed are those who are pure in heart. Follow me, for they shall see God. Blessed are the pure in heart. Write down next to pure in heart, clean motives. You do not have to have perfect actions to have clean motives. Question: what is the motivation for either the conflict that you're engaged in or the conflict that you're playing mediator for? This is a big one, because without pure motives, you will never create peace. Motives are essential. Clean motives, purity of heart is essential not only in peacemaking, but it is essential to the way that you see God, understand God, also the way you see people, follow me, and understand people. I want to make a case for that, and then we're done with this. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Peacemakers have clean motives. Are you still with me? Peacemakers have clean motives. Give me my phone real quick. He says, my phone. Thank you. I'll take that too, man. That was nice. No. I want you to go to another scripture. This came to mind real quick, and then we're out of here. I want you to go to Matthew 13. Because there's an inextricable connection between your heart and your sight of God. Listen to this very carefully. We're almost there, y'all. Verse number 11. This is Jesus speaking. He replied, because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. Two groups of people. Ones that get the revelation, ones that don't. And here's what he says. He's speaking to his disciples about why he uses parables. Very fascinating. Listen to what he says. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have in abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken away from them. This is why I speak in parables. Whew, I love his word. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not understand. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. If in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, you will be ever hearing but never understanding. You will be ever seeing but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become callous. They hardly, follow me, hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they may see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. All right, let me unpack that real quick. Listen to this. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Now, very interestingly, he starts his passage about why he speaks through parables. Parables was not just a cool way for Jesus to tell stories. Some were illustrative parables that unpacked and simplified complex spiritual and natural truths. Other parables were spoken by Jesus to intentionally confuse or to make ambiguous what was clear for people that did not have proper heart motives. He says, to your heart's pure. The people I just spoke this parable to, and they don't understand, their heart's not pure. That's why this happened. He says, watch this. Listen to the one-liner. It's going to be worth the price of admission. Hear this. He said, to him who has, more will be given. Okay, listen. Where is that from? It is from, if you remember, the parable of the talents. When the master gave some of his monetary resource to 3 servants, left, the Bible said, for a long time. And then after leaving for a long time, he comes to reconcile. It is now promotion or demotion time. And 2 of the 3 servants, they go and do good business and double their profits. The other servant takes the resource that he gave him, fearful that he would lose it. He buries it, does nothing with it. And when the master comes back, he gives him the same thing that he gave him. He says, listen, he praised the 2 servants that doubled the money. The one that was quote unquote frugal, he said, you're not frugal. He said, you're fearful. He said, you're lazy. Are you with me? Lazy and wicked servant. He said, take the one that is given to him and give it to the ones that have done something with what I gave them. Then he says, those who have, more will be given. And the one who doesn't have or did not produce, even what he has will be taken away. Why did one group get more and the other one get nothing, or even what he had, it was diminished or taken away? Because he did nothing with what he had, while others took what they had and did something with it. Now, when Jesus speaks about revelation that comes from heaven, from the Father, he says to him that has, more will be given. Number one, the one that does something with the revelation that I give them, because you're not only steward of God's physical monetary resource, you are stewards of God's revelation. And if you do something with the revelation that God gives you, God will double down and give you more revelation. If you do nothing with the revelation that God gives you, he said, you know what? They ain't going to do anything with it anyway. Let me dry this well up. Are you still here with me? This is number one. Here we go. Let's go. Hold your nose. We're going deeper. But then he says, notice the progression. Because there's something incongruent in the text. He said, if they were like y'all with pure heart and pure motives, follow me, they would see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and understand with their mind. Is that what he said? No, he didn't say that. If it was a normal progression, he would have said that. He would have said they would see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and understand with their mind. But what he was trying to reveal to us is revelation from God, understanding from God, and seeing God is not just a mental exercise. It is an exercise of motive. Because we see with our eyes, we hear with our ears, and we don't just understand with our mind, but we understand with our full being. We understand with our hearts. Jesus said, because their heart position is not proper, they will never choose to understand me purely in the way I want to be understood, because they will take what I've given them and their love of riches or worldly influence will cause their motives to be shifted so that what I give them will not be received purely, but it will be jumbled and entangled with ungodly motivations, to the degree that what I put in them will never be expressed from them or through them, not because they're not intellectual, but because their heart is in the wrong place. And when your heart is in the wrong place, you will not only misunderstand and manipulate what God entrusts to you, but you will misunderstand and manipulate what people entrust to you. Because you don't just understand with your mind, you understand with. This is why when you're in a counseling session, this is why mediators are necessary. This is why all the mental health therapists make some noise, the mental health workers. This is why they are necessary sometimes, because here's the thing. Have you ever been in a session where there was a mediator or whether it was a counselor, and the counselor, the therapist, the mediator, or the friend says exactly what you've been saying. And when they say it, they look and say, that's a good point. I never thought about that. Here's an example. Because when you say it as the person who has offended them or that they have offense with, toward you, their heart is closed. And you can try to transmit mentally the logical point that should resonate and make sense. But because not their ears and intellect is closed, but because their heart has been damaged or their heart is closed to you, they cannot receive the true statement, even though it's true, that you said. Now, when you move the individual to someone their heart is open to that has not offended them, they can use verbatim the same words that you used, and when they say it, they can receive it and say, I see what you're saying. I never thought about it that way. Because we don't understand simply with our minds, we understand with our hearts. And as long as my heart posture is closed, my understanding will always be skewed. But when my heart posture is open, I can receive truth, because we do not understand simply with our minds, but we understand with our entire beings. We understand with our hearts. That is why if we don't renovate the heart and work on the purity of the heart, we will never ever get understanding, even if both ways there's truth being spoken, because there is never reception where there's been offense with simple truth and no attention given to the internal motive of the heart. This is why we cannot have peace if we don't address the heart. We can never bring peace if we don't address the heart. It is pure motive that gives advantage and disarms people when there is conflict at times. But over time, it is not perfection, but purity of motive and righteousness in your dealings that allows you, even if it's outside of you, to come where there's fractured relationship and be the one that brokers peace. And we have to be okay with the reality. And listen to me, y'all, some go home and get sleep. Stop trying to get people to get your logic when their heart is still wounded by you. It is okay for you not to be the one that reconciles it all. Sometimes there's a need to find a peacemaker, someone with enough credibility in meekness and in righteousness and with a pure heart, someone with a reputation of having a pure heart and righteous dealings to come in the middle. Even if they say everything you just said, sometimes the issue is not what you said, it's just that you can't say it right now. And if we're going to be peacemakers, over time, we have got to begin to develop a reputation, not of perfection, but of purity of heart.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The kind of person that two people that are at odds can trust and say, listen, I know she is not going to get this tangled up trying to play to you, or you trying to play to her, or trying to play to him. No, this is the kind of person that's going to call it like they see it. Peacemakers have purity of heart. And with all these qualities, it makes sense now that we get to peacemaking. God says we look most like him when we bring peace, when we bring reconciliation. See, some of us, for peacekeeping, have walked by things that needed addressing, but I don't want to get involved with that. But you know you're the singular person that can bring understanding where there's been confusion. You can't call yourself a peacemaker and you keep walking past incongruent things and broken things and unreconciled things. You can't call yourself a peacemaker. You can call yourself a peacekeeper. You cannot call yourself a peacemaker. You turned a blind eye to that because you didn't want to pay any price. He says, when you're a peacemaker, you look like your daddy. The reality is, y'all, that's easier said than done. I was saying that don't make sure you're here at encounter nights as we're fasting. We're here this week. Wednesday, we're just going to prophesy to you all this week. That's going to be the direction. But last week I was sharing with how when you share a word or a series or lead God's people into something, I don't know how it works, but God brings you into the teach then test principle. In other words, you start going through what you're preaching about. Anybody ever been there? God used you to speak a word to somebody and you leave feeling good, like, man, God sure did use me, only to find that you got to deal with what you just preached, and often at a level that you didn't expect. I'm not sitting here as someone or standing here as someone who has arrived and who has this all worked out. I'm not standing here as someone who doesn't have to live through, embody, and try to extend the very thing that I'm sharing with you. And it ain't easy. I this year of my life has faced more hardship and unearthing heart wounds, betrayals, deceptions, and downright hurtful things. I've endured more of that this year than I ever have in my life. Yet when I say, Lord, what would you have me declare? He gives me a series on peace. Peacemaking. Can we do a series on the Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle? Can we do a series on leave room for the Lord's wrath? Can we do a series on no weapon formed against you shall prosper and every tongue that rises against you shall be condemned? Can we do one of those series on like when Elijah, they were laughing at him just because he was bald? He's like, y'all quit playing. Y'all play too much. He walks off and God sends bears to eat him up. But Lord, in the middle of one of the most challenging seasons, one where I have to continue to refresh my heart, hit the refresh button every single day and push the distractions, the periphery, and do what I'm trying to preach to keep my eyes on Jesus. He sends me a message on peacekeeping, making. And I was about to end it after the first message. I said, Lord, I don't think I want to do this series. I'm over this series. But then I came across this story about a snake that wandered into a carpenter's shop. As it moved across the floor, it brushed against a saw and received a small cut. Instead of moving on, the snake turned and he bit the saw, wounding itself even more. Still angry, it wrapped its body around the saw and squeezed, trying to destroy what hurt it. But the tighter it squeezed, the deeper the saw cut into its body. By morning, the snake was dead. Not because the saw attacked it, but because it refused to let it go. My brothers and my sisters, that is the warning that Jesus is giving us. When he said, blessed are the peacemakers. Peacemakers refuse to live by the instincts of the wounded snake. They do not answer every cut with a bite. They do not turn every injury into a war. They refuse to destroy themselves, trying to destroy what hurt them. Peacemakers. Peacemaking does not mean pretending you were never wounded. It means refusing to let the wound turn you into a weapon. Every wound doesn't require war. Some battles are not killing your enemy. Y'all, it's killing you. It's killing me. Peace begins where retaliation loses its grip. Peacemaker is not someone who was never cut. A peacemaker is someone who refuses to keep bleeding over what cut them. And sometimes the call of God is simply this: loosen your grip. Because you cannot heal while clutching the saw. And blessed, truly blessed, are the peacemakers, for they shall say, you look like your daddy.